Wildcoast Wildrun is a 3-day stage run journey up the eastern coastline of South Africa. It starts in Kaimouth. All the runners gather in Kaimouth, which is just south of the Great Kai River, which used to be the former boundary between the South Africa and the former Transkei. And then the runners cross over on the ferry and they start on their 112 kilometre journey north in 3 stages. Each night they stay over at a small hotel on the coastline on the Wild Coast, Cobbin, the Haven, and then finally finish at Hole in the Wall. It's a journey up this spectacular coastline. It's very remote. The experience of the Wild Run is the journey through this shared community land and through this most spectacular coastline you can see behind me. The Wild Coast is an absolutely unimaginable part of the African coastline. Unspoilt, it's got its culture, it's got the wildlife, it's got unbelievable running.
And beaches were just phenomenal. They were just so deserted and pristine and just lovely.
It's inspiring, it's fantastic, the scenery is unbelievable. You do get to do some tough running, but at the same time you do some walking as well. And I think the most important thing for me, and maybe not everybody, but certainly for me and the guys that I ran with, it was a run and not a race. And we end up doing a lot of races. You run against the clock, you do comrades, you do 2 oceans. With this, we ran, we walked, we looked around, we stopped to have something to eat. We weren't in any big rush. And it was 3 really great days.
The Wild Coast and the Wild Run and the combination of the two is a formidable combination. You know, on each day of the Wild Run, you've got beautiful long golden beaches with no footprints. You know, you see just beautiful, unimaginable coastline, dolphins in the ocean, Dwesa Nature Reserve. You're seeing white rhino and there's wildlife around, there's birds. You just get a sense that you are running through something that is so well balanced. So yeah, day 1, 43 k's, relatively flat, relatively quick as well. It's really cool. You know, we cross over from Kaimouth on the ferry. The guys will come across on the ferry, and there's something fundamental about that. You know, crossing out from one place to another on a ferry. And so you leave, you know, one side, you arrive, and there's a start line set up, and then you're off, and you just don't, you know, you're just off into this wilderness for 43 k's. And you meander away along the beachfront, and you pass. You know, Jacaranda Wreck is a big feature on the first section of day 1. Each day has a halfway checkpoint, a CP point, where there's water and goo, 2 of our product sponsors. You come into these places, and Wavecrest is a feature on day 1. It's actually a boutique hotel on the coastline, and they set up a little water point for us there, and the staff will get involved. The guys come in there and they cross a river right in front of Wavecrest, and it's about 60% beach and about 40% grassy headland running. And then yeah, Mazeppa Bay is the last sort of point sticking out on the coast. You know, really every day has sort of these bays and little points that you go around, and Mazeppa is the last one. You come around this point and then you actually see the last 2 bays, and you can actually see Cobbin in the distance.
Beautiful run so far, absolutely fantastic. Lovely conditions, feeling good. Thought there would be some water in this river, so we expected to swim, but I guess that'll be the next one.
It's almost 9 k's into the race. Looking strong, so nice and cool. Partner's pushing me a bit, but
it's like a bloody old woman.
Oh, we've got another 3/4 to go. Oh. Maybe a nice cold beer at the end.
Just arrived at Wavecrest, which is checkpoint 1 on day 1, and just short of halfway as far as I understand. It's been awesome out there, but a lot harder than I expected. That jeep track, I think off the beach, but although jeep track's a lot harder, it's much more sand there. I've got a lot of sand in my shoes now, which is pretty miserable.
Next stop is Mazeppa. Got this water crossing first, we're going to try and negotiate. But the next stop's Mazeppa, and then yeah, 4 k's from there we finish. Looking forward to it.
Wildrun came about spending many years here and exploring different parts of the Wild Coast and finding out that the Wild Coast is spread into so many segments of experiences. You know, you've got the southern sections that are wide open space, and as you move north along the coast you get big cliffs and you've got deep ravines. And so in exploring all these parts of the Wild Coast, it was quickly apparent that this was definitely running country.
I did train. I mean, I trained harder than any other race I had trained before, but it was definitely much harder than I thought it would be.
I think when you're running, sometimes you would like it to be a little bit shorter, but the satisfaction of really being tough is greater the harder it is.
So we're here, we're a couple of 100 meters from the finish. This is the Kora mouth. They said it'd be about waist deep, but as you can see, it was a little bit more than that. But hell of a refreshing after a long run. I was very privileged. I had Mark sorting me out, telling me to stop walking and moaning and keep going, but fantastic to be here. Outstanding.
One of the unique aspects of the Wildrun and the adventure element of the Wildrun is crossing all the rivers that come from the interior and flow out into the ocean. Each river has its own challenges. Each day there's a major river crossing, at least chest deep, if not a swim at some of them. The back half of the field, they get to experience an incoming tide. We time the race very strategically to run on an outgoing tide at first, because largely the river crossings are towards the latter part of the race, part of each day's run. And so the majority of the field will get there on a low tide, and the crossing will be fairly easy. But it's very interesting, you know, the back markers get often, you know, they get to the river and it looks quite mean, you know, the water's pushing in from the ocean, and it plays on a lot of people's minds. You know, we have runners that burst into tears when they get to the edge of big rivers, and the emotional side of what you see is often overwhelming, especially after you run a long day. But the adventure element of that is certainly something that is talked about a lot between the runners, and certainly on the day it plays on their minds until they're there and cross it, and then it's a real high once they've been across and they've accomplished something.
It was interesting. You need to keep everything dry, keep everything on top of your head. Short guys like me, the extra challenge. Found myself swimming on the first day, but it adds a new dimension to running.
We were very privileged this year, the Wildrun 2010, to have the former Springbok captain Bob Skinstad and his long-time mate Ron Rutland come and run the Wildrun to raise awareness for their foundation, Bob's for Good Foundation. And as part of the Wildrun this year, they did a shoe drop on day 2 at the Haven, and they invited runners to come and experience you know, what they do. And I think for the runners, the 20 or 30 runners that actually went to the school, they really experienced something quite unique.
Shoes are a source of pride in Africa. For kids, you know, they often have to walk 5, 6, 7 kilometers or longer to school, often barefoot or with very rudimentary footwear. Being able to give a child a pair of, you know, leather, hard-wearing South African-made school shoes, you know, they're all kids, you know, kick soccer balls around at lunchtime and at break time. So you need something hard-wearing, and that's the most core part of your school uniform. You know, the common theme that we've sort of always talked about is trying to put something back into Africa. I mean, we come from a very privileged white background, and a lot of people we feel they apologise for that their whole life, you know, and we sort of, one day we said, well, we can't apologise for it, but we can do something towards, one, the reparation of apartheid, the inequality in our country, all those kind of things. And the most important thing is to do something that's going to benefit the future.
Day 2 of the Wildcoast Wildrun starts at Cobbin, where obviously the overnight, and we literally start from the car park and we head out the gates, and straight away again they're onto this stunning section of grassy coastline, with cattle tracks everywhere. That's one thing about the Wild Coast, you're following cattle tracks everywhere. Best trail makers in the world, and they meander your way along this stunning section. You're about 20 meters above the sea level. and you meander your way along these, down through these little bays, in and out and in and out. And your checkpoint that day is actually at Dwesa Gate, Dwesa Nature Reserve. And then you climb your first big climb of the Wildcoast Wildrun. You head up this big, steep, grassy ridge, and then you pick up some game trails through the northern section of Dwesa Nature Reserve. It's beautiful long grass and these thick forests, and you make your way just behind the edge of the coastline, edge of the beach, through these forests onto the beach. Some beautiful coastline to finish with, and then you come to the Mbashi River, which is the big river crossing of the Wildcoast Wildrun. And depending on how far up in the field you are, it depends on whether you're wading through up to your waist or whether you're taking a swim, a short swim. Duck onto a last little 1.5 kilometre section of forested jeep track up to the finish at the Haven.
I think such a relaxed run. I think it's going to be really great today. I think the plan is just to enjoy myself today and actually just relax a bit and look at the scenery. I think yesterday I ran quite nicely and didn't really look at the scenery, so today I'm planning to do that. I think it was great last night being able to relax here, and it's nice to not be in a tented camp for once.
Well, yesterday I started off and I did my very first 21k, and then I did my second 21k in a row, and today I'm doing the same again. But I'm so sore I could hardly sleep. What I did realise is that I wasn't hydrated enough, so I've got a backpack full of water now and a couple of other things, but also realised that it's most of the other people which carry you through. So I've had a couple of slaps on the back, and they said as they go past they'll look after me.
Get me going. I don't think it helped my knee much. Got terrible ITV, but see how it goes.
You can see they're very pedantic on getting sand off their feet. They're very townies. They've never lived out of town by the looks of things.
The problem is I learned on the last day that what I should have learned on the first day is that you don't take your shoes off. There's one advice I give to anybody running this again is rather leave your shoes on, because the pain to get them off and the sand and the lava, it's actually better to leave them on, and I would just run through.
We're about at the halfway mark. We've had a very easy first half, fantastic tailwind the whole way, beautiful scenery, beautiful rolling hills, quite easy, not much of a camber, so we are just thoroughly enjoying it.
I think the terrain here is very varied. I mean, you're running on soft sand, hard sand. I sort of really don't like the flats and the hard sand, or the soft sand I should say. The hard sand is bearable on the flats, but I think for me it's that varying terrain that actually makes it such a great event. I think you know, you can sort of know where your strengths are and sort of go fast in those areas. I prefer the technical stuff and sort of try and, you know, look ahead and see where I can make up ground and not necessarily go faster, but just be more efficient. And I think that's what trail running is for me, is, you know, you don't have to be the strongest person out there, you just have to be more efficient than the others.
We've had a fantastic day. It's been tough, but beautiful, stunning, absolutely incredible scenery. It's just it's breathtaking. Gone really slowly to appreciate the scenery, but it's been wonderful, fantastic.
Our main sponsor being Adidas. They fell in love with the concept of the Wildrun and what it stands for and the elements of what it brings. It's not just running, it's the whole experience, and Adidas loved this idea and they were with us from the very beginning.
The Wildcoast Wildrun is a testing ground for Adidas. It's about relationships, it's about getting people to test our product, and it's about getting feedback from them, because we actually want to learn what is it that South African runners want, what is it that we can do better, and that's what the Wildrun is about for us.
And our other presenting sponsor on the Wildrun is the NCC Environmental Services. They're a leading environmental consultant in South Africa. Dean Ferreira from NCC Environmental Services heads up the company. Just absolutely loved this, the Wildrun and what it stood for. Joined us in a smaller capacity in 2009, but has come in 2010 as sharing a presenting sponsorship with Adidas. And we're very privileged to have them on board. absolute highlight of day 2, without a doubt, is crossing through Eastern Cape Tourism Park called Dwesa Nature Reserve. And it's this segment of the Wildcoast that's been kept as a nature reserve. So the forest is pristine, the grassland is not, large parts of the Wildcoast obviously being shared community. The cattle are grazing and the livestock are grazing everywhere. So it's well trimmed. It's a perfect lawn everywhere. You get into Dwesa and suddenly you're back in this African bushveld, and you can feel it. The grass is longer, trails are deeper. You stepped into this African wilderness, this African wildlife preserve, and it's such a privilege.
First of all, I had looked at the map. I saw Dwesa Nature Reserve, never really thought much about it, but it was really beautiful. And I thought, what was apparent is how unspoilt and untouched it is. There were literally large oysters washing up on the sea, on the beach, and you could pick these oysters out of the rock pools. So it was very evident that was unspoilt nature. It's pretty spectacular.
Dwesa, for me certainly, and I think for a lot of the runners, it's a remarkable section of the Wildrun. Day 3 of the Wildcoast Wildrun, you start at the Haven, and straight away you're in a very unique section of the Wildcoast Wildrun. You drop down into this really beautiful forest on the edge of an estuary, and you're surrounded by estuarine birds, and you can hear this early morning cacophony of birds and wildlife in the forest. And you make your way through this forest and drop out onto another golden beach, and you head along. You've got Breezy Point, one of the best surf breaks in the Wild Coast. Make your way along a bit further, you get to Kora Mouth, the checkpoint for the day. And from Kora Mouth, the last water point and goo point on the day, you cross Kora and you're around Bulungula Point, and then you're on to the most spectacular section for me. You head up what they call Mbiza Point headland, and you drop down into a little estuary called Puamanzinyama, and through these aloe forests. And there's some amazing aloe forests down this ridgeline, through a little estuary, up the other side, through these aloe forests, and you top out on this plateau. You make your way across this plateau. It's just grassland, and you're high up over the ocean. You're 100 meters above the ocean. And you look down and there's just dolphins and there's whales, and it's absolutely spectacular. And in the last section, the last 10 Ks, you've got some beautiful running through some local communities. Come through the community and there's these huts, and it's really nice. It's the first real time you've had running time through the communities, and people are so friendly and warm. They come out and they clap and wave and make your way through that. And you've got your last 2 climbs of the day over some ridges, and then you descend on what has to be the most spectacular finish of any run in the world. You start high up on a ridgeline, and you come around a corner, and you're about 100 meters above the hole in the wall, this natural feature. The runners don't know what they're going to see. They come over this ridgeline and they just see this most magnificent setting. This estuary coming out, and this spectacular sight of this block, this hole in it, and the finish is down there, the branding's up, the arch is there, and you've got this absolutely amazing view, and it's all over. You've got this stunning downhill cattle trail down onto the beach, short section across the estuary, and you're at the finish of the Wildcoast Wildrun.
No, I think it's perfect. I think the guys that are tired, yesterday was a bit hot, so I think today I'm actually looking forward to a bit of a nice covered day, and I think it's going to help everyone because the last day legs are tired, and it'll be nice just to enjoy a nice cool day.
Big challenges of putting together a race like this in a remote location like the Wild Coast is obviously accessibility and the communications factor. So we put together a team of guys, specialists in radio communications, and they come all the way up from Cape Town and put together a comms plan for us that enables us to be able to speak from the start of the race to the finish of the race with the HF radio. So we have complete control over everybody's safety on the event in case anybody got injured, and then we have medics placed at strategic points.
The way it's been organised by Owen and Tam is just being done so fantastically that I've got full confidence. It makes me, I don't want to worry about it for a second. I know that they're doing a fantastic job, and the runners can relax and actually just do the run. and just actually enjoy the journey and getting to the other side.
There's no schlepping from one place to another. There's no going in vehicles at the end of the day. It's just point to point, and it's ideal.
We've stayed in stunning places with stunning food, stunning accommodation. It's just been awesome.
The quality of the wild run is the experience, and filling it and trying to have too many people run the wild run was going to detract from the experience of the wild run. The wild run is very personal. Everybody who runs on the wild run, they may not know each other at the start, but they know each other very well by the finish.
I think that it's an unusual run, and a lot of people won't get to see this coastline in South Africa, which is fantastic. I mean, it really is untouched, unspoiled, and pristine in many ways.
But I think definitely the main part of the wild run is actually just getting out here and enjoying the scenery and enjoying the wildlife, and just enjoying the nature that we've got here. I think we don't often take time while we're running to actually look around us, and the wild run does allow us to do that.
All in all, I can just say it's really awesome. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the world, and I mean, we're so privileged just to see it, to be able to run up there. I mean, cars can't get where we were, and that is amazing. You know, you're really grateful to see all these beauties.
Is that a hole in the wall? Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, we did it! And very, very happy to see that sight. We've been waiting for that for 3 days. Yeah, I'll be very elated when we cross that river.
Out of all the races, Comrades, Two Oceans, whatever you want to call them, this is probably the best one. Yes, it is tough, lots of walking, well worth it.
Definitely encourage people to come and do it. I think it's a great thing that he's got going, and yeah, I think it can only improve from year to year. Hey?
To be honest, I'm feeling terrible and sore afterwards, but I think I'll definitely be back. This event, the Wild Run, was put on like one of the best I've ever been to.
Where we live in the Western world is that you're surrounded by fences and everything's owned and portioned up, and the Wild Coast is free. You're running free. It really is a sense of freedom. It brings you back to the base, the real foundation of life and living, and all the senses that you can possibly feel, you'll feel on the Wild Run.
But I'm not the only one with pain from my toes to my bums, blisters and knees, oh physio please, keep making me better. And hey, beautiful day, when the trans sky fills my soul, I'll be home, I'll be home. Martin has all the maps. Owen says it's this way, chaps. Cassie will cruise while Bob hands out shoes. Hey, Greg takes the photos. We are Africa's tribe. No stopping us running wild. And although we're in pain, it's memories we gain, and they last much longer.